Welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. I'm the Reverend Kerry Mueller, co-minister here with the Reverend Dave Hunter, and we are glad you are with us here today or here in sometime in the future, however and wherever and whenever you arrived. Are there special announcements this morning? Guess not. Good.
I will give an announcement.
Okay.
Fair Districts PA is having a town hall on February 17th at 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. It's a collaboration with I have several of these town halls going around in my head, but it is going to collaborate with a group that will talk with us about the Legislative Reapportionment Commission, which is being set up as we speak. They have to choose a fifth member to join with the leaders of the House and the Senate to choose maps once the data is delivered from the Census Bureau. So apparently several of those people on the committee in the last couple of cycles have gone to jail for some reason or another. So it should be a very interesting meeting. And I encourage everybody to attend. Just go to the website, fairdistrictspa.com, and sign up to get a Zoom link. Thanks.
Thank you, Trish. Are there other announcements? The opening words are from Annie Dillard. We are here to abet creation and to witness to it, to notice each other's beautiful face and complex nature, so that creation need not play to an empty house. And Mary, is the chalice ready to be lit? A flame is like a light shining in the eyes of a friend, a bowl like the encircling arms of a friend. We light a chalice of friendship, a beacon to all. Carly, would you play our opening hymn, number 18, What Wondrous Love? Thank you. So I have a story today that's for all of us, although it's especially for the children. And it is adapted from a book that I first read in my French class in high school. Here's a copy of The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It was written in French, although we'll use mostly English this morning. It's an imaginative story about a little prince who lives by himself on a tiny little planet with his friend, the rose. Then there's the rose. The Barnhouse children have roses. Well, then he goes exploring on Earth and he has many adventures there. And in this story, he meets a fox. This is my fox, Reynard. Now, recently, there's a special word in this story in French, and the word is apprivoiser. When I went to look for a name for my fox, I didn't remember any French because it's been many, many years, so I had to look up what was the word for a fox, and it's Reynard, so that's his name. But there's this word apprivoiser, and I didn't have to check the dictionary for that because I remembered it all the way from high school. And why did I remember it? because I got it wrong on a vocabulary quiz one time. And after that, I remembered it always. So sometimes when you make a mistake, it helps you in the long run, but that's a story for another day. In any case, one last thing. When this fox Reynard talks about men, maybe he means human beings in general, or maybe he really just means men. I'll let you figure that out. So this is chapter 21, and the first picture shows the little prince on earth, and he's looking at some roses. These are not his rose, but they're roses that are there. And he was feeling sad. And it was then that the fox appeared. "Good morning," said the fox. Good morning," said the little prince, a little politely, although when he turned around, he couldn't see anything. "I'm right here," said the fox, "under the apple tree." "Where are you?" asked the prince. You're very pretty to look at." "I am a fox," said the fox. "Come and play with me," proposed the little prince. "I am so unhappy." "I cannot play with you," said Reynard. "I am not tamed." "Please excuse me," said the little prince. But after some thought, he added, "What does it mean, tame?" And that's that word apprivoiser, means to tame. "Well," said the fox, "you do not live here. What is it that you are looking for?" "I'm looking for men," said the little prince. What does that mean, tame?" "Men," said the fox. "They have guns and they hunt. It is very disturbing. They also raise chickens. These are their only interests." "Are you looking for chickens?" And there is, in fact, a picture of a hunter. And there's another picture of the little prince and the fox talking to each other. "Well, no," said the little prince, "I'm not looking for chickens. I'm looking for friends." "What does that mean, tame?" "It is an act all too often neglected," said the fox. "It means to establish ties." "To establish ties?" "Just that," said the fox. "To me, you are still nothing more than a little boy who is just like 100,000 other little boys, and I have no need of you. And you, on your part, you have no need of me. To you, I am nothing more than a fox like 100,000 other foxes. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. To me, you will be unique in all the world. And to you, I will be unique in all the world." "I'm beginning to understand," said the little prince. "Does unique mean something to you?" "It means you're the only one." Well, there's a flower, a rose. I think she has tamed me." "It is possible," said the fox. "On earth one sees all sorts of things." Oh, but this is not the earth," said the little prince. The fox seemed very perplexed and very curious. "On another planet? Are there hunters on that planet?" "No." "Ah, that is interesting. Are there chickens?" "Ah, no." "Well, nothing is perfect," said the fox, but he came back to his idea. And thank you for waving the rose, because he's talking about his friend the rose. "My life is very monotonous," said the fox. "I hunt chickens, men hunt me, all the chickens are just alike, and all the men are just alike. And in consequence, I am a little bored. But if you tame me, it will be as if the sun came to shine on my life. I will know the sound of a step that will be different from all the others. Other steps send me scurrying back underneath the earth. Yours will call to me like music out of my burrow. And then, you see those grain fields down there? I do not eat bread. Wheat is of no use to me. The wheat fields have nothing to say to me, and that is sad. But you have hair the color of gold. Think how wonderful that will be when you have tamed me. The grain, which is also golden, will bring me back to the thought of you, and I will love to listen to the wind in the wheat." The fox gazed at the little prince for a long time. "Please tame me," he said. I want to very much, said the little prince, but I have not much time. I have friends to discover and a great many things to understand. One only understands the things that one tames, said the fox. Men have no more time to understand anything. They buy things already made in the shops, but there's no shop anywhere where one can buy friendship. And so men have no friends anymore. If you want a friend, tame me. Well, how do I do that? Asked the little prince. You must be very patient, said the fox. First, you sit down a little distance from me, like that, on the grass, and I shall look at you out of the corner of my eye. And you will say nothing. But every day you come a little closer. And the next day the prince did come back. And the fox said, you know, it would have been better if you came back at the same time. Because if you come at 4 every day, then at 3 I shall start to feel happy. And as it gets closer and closer to 4, I'll be really happy and I'll jump up and down. But if you come at just any time, I'll never know when to be ready to greet you. One must observe the proper rites. What is a rite? Asked the little prince. Those are also actions too often neglected, said the fox. They are what make one day different from another, 1 hour different from other hours. There is a rite, for instance, among my hunters. Every Thursday they dance with the village girls. So Thursday is a wonderful day for me. I can take a walk as far as I want, down to the vineyards. But if the hunters just danced at any time, every day would be like every other day, and I would never have any vacation at all. So the little prince tamed the fox, and when the hour of his departure drew near, he said, said the fox, I shall cry. It is your own fault, said the little prince. I never wished you any sort of harm, but you wanted me to tame you. Yes, that is so, said the fox. And now you're going to cry, said the little prince. Yes, that is so, said the fox. Then it has done you no good at all. Oh, it has done me good, yes, because of the color of the wheat fields. And then he added, go and look at those roses here on earth. You will understand now that your rose is unique in all the world. And then come back to me and I will make you a present of a secret. So the prince went away to look at the roses, and he looked at them and he said, you know, you are not at all like my rose. As yet you are nothing. No one has tamed you, and you have tamed no one. You were like my fox when I first knew him. He was only a fox like 100,000 other foxes, but I have made him my friend, and now he is unique in all the world. And the roses were very much embarrassed. You are beautiful, he said to the roses, but you are empty. One could not die for you. To be sure, an ordinary passerby would think that my rose looked just like you, the rose that belongs to me. But in herself alone, she is more important than all the hundreds of thousands of other roses, because it is she that I have watered. It is she that I have put under a glass globe. It is she that I have sheltered behind a screen, because it is for her that I've killed the caterpillars, except for the 2 or 3 we saved to become butterflies, because it is she that I have listened to when she grumbled or boasted, or even sometimes when she said nothing, because she is my rose. And then he went to meet the fox and said, goodbye. Goodbye, said the fox, and now here is my secret. It's a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that we can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. It is the time you have wasted for your rose that makes your rose so important. And the little prince repeated it. What is essential is invisible to the eye. It's the time I've wasted on my rose that makes it so important. Men have forgotten this truth, said the fox, but you must never forget it. You become responsible forever for whatever you have tamed. You are responsible for your rose. I am responsible for my rose, the little prince repeated, so that he would be sure to remember it. So we can remember that we are responsible for anything we have tamed. Thank you, children. You can stay and listen to the rest of the service now. It's about being friends. And now will the four readers unmute themselves and pick up their sheet. And we have four different quotes on friendship. That is, we have 12, but we have four readers. And if the readers would name the sources as well, I would appreciate that. Normally, we would have it right there in the order of service and people could read it. Alan, you're first.
Without friends, no one would choose to live, though he had all other goods. Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics.
Friendship make prosperity more shining and lessens adversity by dividing it and sharing it. Cicero.
Have no friends not equal to yourself. Confucius.
Do not protect yourself by a fence, but rather by your friends. It's a Czech proverb.
You can't shake hands with a quenched fist. Indira Gandhi.
We all need friends with whom we can speak of our deepest concerns, and we do not fear to speak the truth in love, and who do not fear to speak the truth in love to us. Margaret Gunther.
It's the friends you can call up at 4 a.m. that matter. Marlene Dietrich.
Friendship with oneself is all important because without it, one cannot be friends with anybody else in the world. Eleanor Roosevelt.
In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Martin Luther King Jr.
There can be no friendship without confidence, and no confidence without integrity. Samuel Johnson.
No person is your friend who demands your silence or denies your right to grow. Alice Walker.
We need not think alike to love alike. Francis David.
Thank you all so much. And Francis David, as some of you know, was an early Unitarian. So we are responsible for the rows we share, this community of memory and hope. If you woke up this morning with a joy that you could not wait to share, or a sorrow that is weighing on your heart, now is the time to share your personal joy or sorrow. Please unmute yourself and share a few words, and I will drop a stone in the bowl of water to make a physical sign of the ripples that connect among us.
We have a concern this morning. We have a neighbor who is going through some medical problems, possibly MS, but they're not sure. So please keep her in your thoughts and send her positive energy.
Thank you.
I have a joy. Thank you, everybody, for all the cards and the well wishes. And I also have a joy that we got our first COVID vaccine on Thursday. And also will present an offer if somebody has been unable to get their first shot. Our daughter is helping people do it. So you can contact me if you if you're over 65, if you, because I know it's been hard for people to get their first vaccine. So you could contact me if you would like for her to try for you too.
I have a joy and a concern. This is the week that Karen and Ben, my son and his wife, will close on their house. It's an exciting time and a scary time for them, having gone through lots of bumpy road in their lives together. So I'm happy and a little worried and nervous for them.
Well, thank you all for sharing your joys and your sorrows and your concerns. And I drop one last stone for all those joys and sorrows that are not shared here this morning. But we're connected to everyone, whether directly or indirectly. Well, we are responsible for this rose that we share, this community of memory and hope. And if you woke up this morning with the resources to help make this fellowship stronger for us and for the world, you can find the link to the donate button in the chat while Carly plays a hymn for us, number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. Thank you, Carly, and thank you from the friends from whom that song originates. The meditation this morning is called A Friend Along the Way, and it is by our colleague, Laurelyn Bellamy. Dare we look into one another's eyes and discover there a friend? Dare we lower our masks and confess our humanity is flawed and still profess compassion for one another? In whose spirit do we congregate? Or why do we bother to struggle and celebrate our common life? Perhaps it is in recognition of this truth that we sustain. No matter who we are or why, we all need a friend along the way. So I went originally to the library to do some research about friendship and religion. And I turned to the trusty Encyclopedia of Religion, which is a multi-volume book, which is too much for one person to own. And I opened the volume for F, and friendship was not listed as a religious topic. So I tried some other theological dictionaries and reference works, and there was nothing. Apparently, this very basic human relationship has not been considered important in theological circles. Fortunately, I remember that our own Ralph Waldo Emerson had written an essay on friendship, and a friend reminded me that Mary Hunt, a founder and director of WATER, that's the Women's Alliance for Theology, Ethics, and Ritual. It's a think tank in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I looked up and it still exists and is thriving. And she's written a wonderful book about friendship called Fierce Tenderness. Interestingly, both of these authors, Emerson in 1841 and Hunt 150 years later, note that very little has been written on the spiritual depths of friendship. They both agree that friendship is important, although only Hunt would appreciate the earthy way in which Zora Neale Hurston expresses that importance. Hurston says, "It seems to me that trying to live without friends is like milking a bear to get cream for your morning coffee. It's a whole lot of trouble and it's not worth much after you get it." Emerson is cited in many books of quotations. He writes, "Happy is the house that shelters a friend. A friend may well be reckoned the masterpiece of nature." And the poem from which this sermon takes its title includes the line about a friend that he feared lost. "I fancied he was fled, and after many a year glowed unexhausted kindliness like daily sunrise there. My careful heart was free again. The fountains of my hidden life are through thy friendship fair." Hunt says that friendship is available to everyone and that friendship by its nature assumes that persons live in relationships and that relationships are good. Mary Hunt always looks at things in terms of social justice, and so she points out that friendship has the potential to alleviate social ills because it can link persons who otherwise might be what she calls structural enemies, undermining the divisions between people in different racial or ethnic groups or groups pitted against each other. And then it motivates friends to work to change the social structures because of the commitment to one another. When a friendship works, she says, people know. It generates something new for both the persons and the larger community of which they are a part. Generativity is a hallmark of friendship. Friendship may generate an art project, a party, the nurture of a child, a small business. True friendship is creative. For Hunt, friendship is both fierce and tender. Fierce in the intensity of attention paid to a friend. We attend, she writes, to the quality of our lives and the lives of those we love. That is sufficient spirituality for me. Tenderness, she said, is what only those who love can give. It is the quality of care and nurture that only friends share. And although Emerson and Hunt are rooted in different times and different cultural associations and assumptions, much of what they say about the nature of friendship is overlapping. Emerson speaks of two essential characteristics of friendship. The first is truth. A friend is someone with whom you can be utterly sincere without beating around the bush or falling into polite little lies. He even calls the friend a beautiful enemy, someone important, a challenge, not a trivial convenience. And I find it interesting that both Emerson and Hunt lift up the searing power of giving someone one's whole attention. He calls it truth, and she calls it fierceness. Emerson goes on to name the other half of friendship, which, like Hunt, he names as tenderness. How interesting, they both use that same sweet and delicate word, tenderness, to convey the wide spectrum of love between friends. Have you ever experienced with Emerson that overwhelming excitement? A new person, he writes, is to me a great event and often hinders me from sleep. He even speaks of friends as lovers who carry out the world for me to new and noble depths. Hunt offers vivid imagery to picture fierce tenderness for us. Imagine, she says, a baby furiously gulping down her mother's milk while tenderly patting the breast with her little hand. Remember that first flush of attraction as you find connection after connection with a friend? Recall the anger when love fails? Fierce tenderness, says Hunt, is a model of friendship as right relationship. In her model, there are four essential elements to friendship, elements which all relate to each other: love, power, embodiment, and spirituality. But before we look at these, let me share you a little story. There was a lady I knew from another congregation long ago and far away. Her name was Elizabeth. And it was Elizabeth who first commissioned the first version of this sermon when it was a services auction offering. And she told me about four friends who looked after one another as they aged. They visited each other frequently. They went to museums. They had parties together. They gave each other little presents. They phoned to inquire after one another. And finally, one of them, Marion, became seriously ill. First, she was in a hospital, and then she moved to a nursing home. The others continued to visit her as best they could, but they didn't have cars, and it was a difficult journey. Caroline remained faithful, however. She wasn't so young herself, but again and again, she went into the subway system, and she climbed onto buses, and she traveled long distances with flowers and presents to see her friend as Marion faded. And when Marion finally died, it turned out in her will, she had left all of her money to the two other friends in that group, 1/3 to one and 2/3 to the other. Now, she didn't mean to slight Caroline, but she gave in proportion to what she perceived to be their financial need. This arrangement was a bit of a shock to the faithful Caroline, but it made a certain sense because, in fact, her need was less. Her other friends, however, valued her friendship and loyalty and care. They knew that Marion and they and the world were better off because Caroline was willing to inconvenience herself week after week for a dying friend's sake. They came to a decision. The one who had received a double portion split her inheritance in two and gave half to Caroline. So they all end up with the same financial reward, but each of them received an infinity of friendship. It sounds like a parable, doesn't it? What is this story about? Is it about unfairness? The most faithful friend received nothing originally. Or generosity? The poorest among the friends received the most and then gave the most. Or is it simple grace? By their choices of action and giving, they all made a better world. Mary Hunt would call it fierce tenderness. And each of her 4 elements of friendship is to be found among these friends. First, love is Hunt's first element. Love, she says, is an orientation towards the world as if my friend and I were more united than separated, more at one among the many than separate and alone. Love is the intent to deepen the unity without losing the uniqueness of the individuals. I think of my friend Franny, who showed me love with unexhausted kindliness after a long hiatus. This was 45 years ago and more. I had been away in England for a year when my then husband was on sabbatical. And during that year, that marriage pretty much fell apart. And I returned home sad and desperate, uncertain about my future, anxious. A few days later, in the produce section of the local supermarket, I spotted my friend Franny. And after that awful year away, there she was, like an angel of kindness. And right there, amid the cabbages and the bananas, I threw myself into her arms, and I burst into tears. Now, Franny didn't seem to mind who might be staring at this spectacle. She didn't press me for the story. She just hugged me and soothed me, and she stood by me over the next difficult months. There was love between us, and I bless her to this day, though I can't find her these days. Second is power. Power is Hunt's second element. It's one of those words that makes us feel uneasy, and Mary Hunt readily agrees to that. But she defines power in friendship as simply the ability to make choices for ourselves and our dependent children and with our community. Power exists in every relationship, both between the individuals and arising from their places in the world. So many things influence their power: social standing, intelligence, wealth, age, sex, strength of character, charisma. Friends may empower one another, or they may reach such an imbalance of power that the friendship crumbles under the weight. Hunt cites feminist author Letty Prograbin. Friendship requires equality. Unlike love, it cannot be unilateral or unrequited. Unlike sex, it cannot be imposed. Friendship must be mutual. Our friend Emerson agrees. He says, I ought to be equal to every relation. And he understands that true equality in friends requires that each friend feel free to be who or she really is. It is not some insincere mask trying to create a false similarity. In his antique and flowery, and I'm sorry to say sexist language, he puts it this way. Friendship requires that rare means betwixt likeness and unlikeness that piques each other with the presence of power and of consent in the other party. I am equally balked by antagonism and compliance. Let him not cease an instant to be himself. The only joy I have in his being mine is that the not mine is mine. The not mine is mine. We must give room to our friend and respect the differences between us, or else there is only one and not two in the relationship. I think of E.M. Foster's novel, Howard's End. Two characters, sisters, Meg and Helen Schlegel, are independently wealthy young women. They befriend a poor and ill-educated young man, a clerk in an insurance company. They are intrigued by him. He seems so exotic to them, but they do not see him as a real and independent person, only as someone to study and help from their lofty position. They mean to do him good and to do so responsibly. Early on, Helen says, one must not play at friendship. And yet, of course, this turns out to be exactly what they do. The relationship at its depths is lacking equality. The imbalance of power pushes inexorably on to a tragedy for the young man. Power is always present in a relationship. It is well for us to recognize that and to respond to it appropriately. Embodiment is Hunt's third element. By embodiment, she means to remind us that virtually everything we do and who we are is mediated by our bodies. Embodiment in friendship ranges from the very intimate to the societal, from the sexuality implicit in some relationships and some friendships, to society's allocation of the goods of the world, such as nutrition, shelter, healthcare, rest, leisure. As embodied beings, we touch our friends with pats and hugs, and roughhousing, the braiding of hair, caring for the sick, kisses. We realize we must accommodate our friends' limitations. Sometimes we express our friendship by creating access for the disabled, or choosing a restaurant, back in the days when we could go to restaurants, where he could find vegetarian choices. We celebrate and nurture our friends as we share meals, give and receive gifts, work and play, and do everything else in a physical way. I wonder, these many years later, what Mary Hunt thinks of Facebook friendship. It may indeed be a manifestation of a real embodied friendship, or a step towards a real face-to-face friendship. Or it may be something else entirely, some wispy and distant connection, or the remnants of a once powerful relationship. This question, of course, has risen in importance in these pandemic times, when friendship may mean Zoom meetings or handwritten letters or care packages more than afternoon tea or just hanging out together. But I feel certain that she remains committed to the value of friendship as an embodiment of love and care, and not only a matter of electrons. Emerson, however, departs from Hunt here. He can't imagine mixing up friendship with worldly things, such as bodies or money or even a lot of visiting. Perhaps his friendships would thrive in lockdown. Think how many people he could share his ideas with, how many Twitter followers he might have, and never have to leave his quiet book-lined haven. Emerson sees friendship as spirituality in otherworldly terms, and he rejects the mundane world. He writes, "Why should we desecrate noble and beautiful souls by intruding on them? Why insist on rash personal relations with your friend? Why go to his house or know his mother or his brother or sister? Leave this touching and clawing. Let him be to me a spirit, a message, a thought, a sincerity, a glance from him I want, not news or pottage." Now I have to side with Hunt on this one. After all, it is common lore that Emerson left the ministry because he couldn't stand making pastoral visits and getting so involved in people's messy lives. With Hunt, I believe that friendship and spirituality are deeply embedded with the business of living as embodied persons in a real material world. Apps may be a piece of that, or they may facilitate embodied relationships, helping people find snow shoveling help or bringing together the person with too many nice shipping boxes and the person who needs them, enabling me to discuss the joys and burdens of ministry with a Catholic priest whom I've known only slightly and 20 years ago and have not seen since. But his friendship is richer when it has a presence in the real world. I think of a simple act of physical generosity across the then deep divide, cultural differences that caused my father, Fred, to remember his friend Frank for 8 decades. Frank was an Italian boy, as Fred put it. Fred was the son of German immigrants, and that was a big difference then. We're talking in the early 1920s. What was important to them, however, was that they were boys together, friends in 3rd grade at PS 13 in Brooklyn, a school with a very strict dress code. Boys were expected to wear ties to school. One morning, as they lined up in the schoolyard, Frank said, "Hey, Fred, you forgot to put on your tie this morning." Fred was in trouble, but Frank had a ready solution. He took off his own tie and pulled out his pocket knife. Carrying a knife, of course, was normal in those days, and he cut his tie in 2. Each of them managed to tuck the top half of the tie into the top of his shirt, and they went into school. Now, this wasn't a big deal to Frank, although I wonder what his none too wealthy parents thought when he came back home with half a tie. It was just embodied love, a story remembered and told over a lifetime. And after I repeated this story in another congregation many years ago, someone shared with me a similar story. Her father and his friend were altar boys together under the supervision of a very strict priest. And one Sunday morning, one boy realized that he had forgotten to bring his prayer book. "No problem," said the other, and he took his own and ripped it in half right along the spine, and each boy carried half a prayer book with the cover showing. Friendship embodied. Spirituality is Hunt's 4th element of friendship. Unlike Emerson, Hunt does not take an ethereal view of spirituality. He believes that friendship should be spiritual, but that he means that it should be rare and precious and above the cares of the world, lofty and beyond the risks of dependency. I do then with my friends as I do with my books. I would have them where I can find them, but I seldom use them. And I think that word use is perhaps significant there. In Hunt's model, spirituality is important, but it's much closer to home. She says spirituality means making choices about the quality of life for oneself and one's community. This expresses Hunt's concern and conviction that the religious impulse towards meaning and value is expressed in very concrete ways. It's attention to quality, not quantity. It includes choices within the community, joining our resources together to do what we cannot do alone, such as support for the arts, celebrating our life passages together, working together for religiously based social change, and attention to the world and community in ways that enhance people's lives. It was this spiritual quality of friendship that inspired Unitarian minister James Reeb to answer Martin Luther King's call in 1965. Dr. King needed hundreds of clergy and other committed people to come to Selma to demonstrate with African Americans for their civil rights. The Reverend Reeb, along with many others, dropped everything and flew to Alabama. He did it to be with his friends, to support the cause that would change the world in the way which their faith demanded. He did not know, as he walked to supper at Brown's restaurant that night, that he would be attacked by 4 white thugs with baseball bats. He did not know that he would die by violence had become the symbol which inspired the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. He did not know what happened, but he went because friendship demanded that he take that risk. And this is what Jesus meant when he said to his disciples, "Greater love hath no man than he lay down his life for his friends." Reeb became a martyr to the civil rights movement and a friend to humanity. As I consider these stories again in the current context, it seems to me that they form a good primer on the essence of friendship, but they leave out much, things that we just barely glanced at, different kinds of friendship, and friendship across the barriers of space or of social differences, friends across the chasm of the dual reality we live in these days. I think of the Reverend Sylvester Beeman's call in his benediction at President Biden's inauguration to build these friendships. He said, "We need to love the unlovable." Well, another day for those. Love, power, embodiment, spirituality. Fred and his friend Frank, Elizabeth's friends, your friends, here in this congregation and in the wider world, we all live out our friendships in real and heartfelt ways, ways both fierce and tender. Love, power, embodiment, and spirituality, unexhausted kindliness. And so may it be for each of us. May our friendships glow with unexhausted kindliness. May they partake of love and power and embodiment and spirituality. May we be wholly attentive to our friends, and may we share with them fierce tenderness. Carly, our closing hymn is number 346. Come sing a song with me. A rose in the winter time. We are responsible for our roses, for this community of memory and hope, for the circle of our friends, for the wider community of geography and nationality and the whole world with all the beings we share on this planet. May we live up to that responsibility and care for those around us and aspire to learn to love even the unlovable. Amen, shalom, salam, and blessed be. And goodbye, says Renard.